My mother's family was all from Russia, from close to the area that I'm writing about. And so I grew up dancing folk dances and with some Jewish Russian mostly, but some Russian cuisine and food, and then became fascinated by that culture. And when I was only in 7th grade, I started studying Russian language pretty seriously. I studied that all the way through high school, and that became, you know, some people are on sports teams and that's the main thing they do, or whatever it is in that formative time in life. But for me, it was Russian club, and it was a very, very close-knit group. That just became a large part of who I was. And then when I was 14, I had the opportunity to go to the Soviet Union the last year that it was the Soviet Union. It was shifting, but the fundamentals of that country were still very much very, very different from anything that I had ever experienced, and in polar opposites in many ways from my life that I saw in the United States. And when I went over there, I stayed for a couple months and spent a large part of that time with a host family in this factory/university town in the far north of Russia, way north, up near the Finnish border in an area called Karelia. And the town is called Petroplavilsk. I would eat with them, I'd talk to them, I'd go to school with my host student, Vova, and I'd go to church with his mother. It shaped my entire perspective about the country and gave me a real way of kind of having a sensory experience with it. I never thought of this novel as being a science fiction book. It still doesn't feel that way to me. It feels like it's fabulist in some ways. It springs from folk tales, and the science fiction elements, like the space mirrors that keep the town lit 24/7, so there's no darkness, feel to me just like a modern kind of version of some beast that might have been in a folk tale. They operate in the same way for me in the way that the story works. So I've very much always been interested in fables and folk tales and magic realism, and the way that that kind of can open up a story and add different layers and force me as a writer to work in different ways. Because I had space mirrors, well, then I had to figure out in physics what the orbits would look like. If I was going to look at this world realistically, which was very important to me, that it felt like a real solid world and not something that was totally different in the way that a science fiction world might feel. You know, I had to know what would be the effect of 24/7 sunlight. How would that affect the plants? How would that affect the animals? What would that do to people's psychology? That helped me figure out a way to approach the landscape and the surroundings and all of the elements of this fictional world in a way that it just gave me a container within which to try to use my imagination. At heart, this book is essentially a love story. It just happens to be a love story between two brothers. It's not a sexual love, but it is an extremely close bonding that is, in at least the protagonist's mind, closer than anything that could be even in a romantic relationship. There's this what I hope, a very deeply felt connection between the two brothers that is driving the entire story. All of these fantastical elements, the fable elements, the fact that it's in Russia, all of that is secondary really to that heart of the story. That's what I was most interested in. And in that way, it is perhaps the closest to my own life of anything that I've written. My brother was, for a long, long period, the most important person in my life. And I was the most important person in his life. And then as the adult world encroached, and as we became adults and grew into who we are now, other people moved into our lives. There are pressures in that changed our relationship, and I was very interested and felt like I had to write about that. That was something that felt both sad and also good to me at the same time, and necessary. And I'm lucky that I still am extremely close with my brother. We still have, I would say, just as much love and just as much closeness as we ever had, but we've had to figure out how to fit that into growing up and into the pressures of the world around us. So this is the story of two brothers who are facing the same thing.